Right then, the signing of Manuel Ugarte is becoming a reality, and United are desperate for a player that really fulfills that tactical requirement. Someone in that position that can stop that back and forward transition that United have been plagued with over the last year or so. Now, we looked at the worry with signing Ugarte the other day, and there are reasons to have reservations about the transfer in terms of his qualities on the ball. Frankie de Jong, he is not. However, the persistence from United shows that there is an understanding of what we want the player for, and there is a lot to like about it. So today I'm going to give you a bit of a tactical take on what I think the benefits are that come with having Ugarte in this United midfield. And it starts with Bruno Fernandes, Mason Mount, and Kobbie Mainoo, and probably to a greater or lesser degree, Casemiro as well, if he sticks around. Now, United signed Casemiro in the summer of 2022, and we just lost 2-1 at home to Brighton and 4-0 away to Brentford. And we saw him debut against Southampton, and for the rest of the season, we saw a leader, an exceptional defensive midfielder, someone on and off the ball that really contributed. And there was people, including myself, using the words Roy Keane in the same sentence as Casemiro, because the performance level in that first season was outstanding. And we know the history. We know that his second season was, for the most part, an abject failure. But he started this season well, and it started in pre-season, actually, with him looking very lean. Now, I saw him in January, February, and he looked chunky, for want of a better word. And he looks lean. I saw him, literally 2 feet away in pre-season, and he looks real lean. I think it's important that we establish what Casemiro does in this side so we can look to what the next defensive midfielder has to replicate or potentially even improve on. Now, as it stands, there is a bit of a lock holding the midfield back, and finding the right player to unlock that potential, I think, is essential. Now, Ten Hag wants a defensive midfielder to win the ball. Okay, that's doable. To do that, you're going to have to be athletic, because you're going to have to cover a lot of ground, not just forward and back, but also laterally. And I would say, actually, especially laterally. And they need to be a bit of balance. They need to be able to control a game with and without the ball. Now, obviously, that's a lot to ask for, but it's not impossible. That archetype of DM is someone that's out there, and it's also a bit of a necessity for the system that I think we explained pretty well a week or so ago, requires it. Now, the key appears to be a duel-winning midfielder. And that duel-winning midfielder appears to be Manuel Ugarte. And despite the criticisms that have been thrown towards him and the fact that it hasn't quite gone to plan for him at PSG, well, there's no great shakes there, I think it's worth breaking down actually what he's all about. There is a bit of an equilibrium in Ugarte's qualities. He has balanced himself, and I think he changes United tactically. I think the best qualities also have a little bit of room to improve. Now, this isn't a scout report. If you follow the channel, you'll know that we've done that in the past anyway. Ugarte is the answer to unlocking United midfield, because he's going to also improve every player in that midfield. And I think it starts with Kobbie Mainoo. Now, Ugarte is a proper ball winner. And we talked about the yin and yang the other day, about how Ugarte fits and how Mainoo fits, and how neither of them are actually an 8 or a 6. And both of them are kind of like, they do all of these things that the 8 or the 6 does, but also these things, which really overlaps. Ugarte is a ball winner. He is a player that when he's allowed to press high, he will, and he's exceptional, and he will win the ball up high for you as well. And that's ideal when you think about the things that we saw with Casemiro a little bit last season. Casemiro was steps slower than everybody else, both physically and mentally, it seemed. And there was also games where it looked like he was determined to get a yellow card. Having Ugarte in the team means that United are putting their trust in a player that can put that dirty work in. He's got that defensive sort of nous. He's got that physical fitness to cover huge amounts of ground. And when I think about what that's going to do, I think the effect that has on Kobbie Mainoo, I think that Kobbie Mainoo could be like the single biggest benefactor of having Ugarte in this team. Mainoo's going to be able to push higher up the pitch. The defensive responsibility isn't completely gone. He's going to feature as a deep-lying playmaker for the most part, I think. But it's not all on him anymore. I think back when we used to look for the guy that could unlock Pogba, and maybe Matic was the closest one to that. This is a similar sort of thing. Mainoo could kick into an even higher gear with the right partner alongside him. And I think Ugarte's preference to trust others with progressing the ball is why I think Kobbie Mainoo works really, really well with him. Ugarte will be like, hey, I'll get the ball back and I'll give it you, or Mount, or Bruno, to carry the ball into those dangerous areas. And I think that reality is where Mainoo really starts to look like the influential dictator of play. Now, his per 90 stats already show enough. At PSG, he's had so many creative forces in front of him. He's not really needed to progress the ball. He sits a bit deeper and he keeps a bit of a steady pass completion. He gets a lot of the ball, but he plays it relatively safe. I mean, actually really safe. 94% pass completion tells you everything that he's looking to do. He's also in the 99th percentile for the sheer number of tackles, telling you that's what this guy's about. He's in the 98th percentile for interceptions. And you think about Bruno Fernandes. Now, Bruno came to United and just delivered goals and assists and performances and grit and will. And he's deployed in multiple different positions and roles. And against Fulham, he was acting as a centre forward at times. Bruno plays his best when he's given a little bit of space, and he doesn't really need a lot of time on the ball. But if you can get his head up, he can be deadly. He creates the most chances with regularity in the Premier League. That space tends to arrive when United are on the counter. Now, Ugarte, again, does best when it comes to being on the counter press. And we're, I think, looking to do that under Erik ten Hag. And when you watch Ugarte, he loves to take the ball, but he's equally very capable of releasing it as soon as he wins it. And he prefers that short, easy, safe pass, if you like, into someone that's going to be a bit more of a creative force, such as Bruno Fernandes. Now, if Bruno is the receiver of that ball, you can already picture Ugarte wins it. His first protocol is a Mainoo or a Bruno. And as soon as it arrives with Bruno, you would expect to see Rashford, Garnacho, Ahmad, Højlund bursting forward and into space. The signing of Ugarte is about turning up the heat on opposition, maintaining that element of control that we had under Casemiro, but you absolutely question if we'd have the same level of control with Ugarte as we did with Casemiro. He's an athletic upgrade for sure, which I think improves our midfield partially on its own. And then you go Mason Mount. Now, I think we should look at Mason Mount, because the signing of Mason Mount, we looked at it last season, was like, okay, are we going to try and play like a pair of very offensive eights? And then Kobbie Mainoo came on the scene and Mason Mount got injured, and we've basically seen, an hour or so of Mason Mount since. And that confusion hasn't really gone away. He is still a quality player, and I think his desire to press is a massive asset to have in there, but fitting him into the United side has always been a struggle, and obviously his injuries haven't really helped his cause there. But with the signing of Ugarte, I actually think you might see more of Mount, weirdly. In pre-season and against Fulham, we did see Mason Mount actually looking like the player that we bought. He looked like a player that was worthy of starting for us, and he looked like he deserved opportunities. He played in the 10, kinda, against Fulham, and he chased down every loose ball. There wasn't a moment where Mount was not running. It was a little bit headless chicken at times, but he was putting the graft in. Now, he could be a versatile box-to-box midfielder. He was really unlucky not to score. He also probably could have improved what he was doing on the ball as much as he was doing off the ball. But I think Ugarte slotting in behind Mason Mount gives you a real solid workhorse of a midfield that's going to get the ball back. And actually, Mason Mount's probably more known as a bit of a creator than he is like someone that's going to go get you the ball back. But you have players that are desperate to press and to get that ball back. With the progressive capabilities that make having regained possession mean something. Now, players like Mount have got it in them to turn the heat up on the opposition in an instant, as does Ugarte. Casemiro, I don't know if he has that physical ability anymore. Winning the ball high up is just maybe something in his past. And the bonus one here is Joshua Zirkzee. Now, I think it's actually worth mentioning Joshua Zirkzee because I think even he starts to thrive. He likes to drop into midfield and he has the flair to turn something into nothing. He's got the ability, if you've got a fully functioning midfield that's working well for United, having Zirkzee drop into those areas and start to overload that thing, especially with his physical presence, could be a real problem for the opposition. United experimented late last season with packing that high press and midfield, and I think that's what you might see with Ugarte, Mount, Bruno, Zirkzee, all kind of combining. There's a level of athleticism, I mean, and Mainoo's no slouch neither, but there's a level of athleticism that seems to take a leap forward with a couple of those players operating together. Now, I think it's kind of hard to see a reality where Ugarte doesn't improve our midfield. We have got people who can progress the ball and we've got defenders who can progress the ball. We do not need Ugarte to be Frankie de Jong and get on the ball and really make things tick. We need Ugarte to come in and get it back. Because that's where this United side struggled last season, is that we didn't look terrible when we got the ball with our fully fit squad, with Martinez and De Ligt and Mazraoui, and should we ever see Luke Shaw in a United shirt again? If not, you've got Delo. You've got defenders there perfectly capable of progressing the ball, plus Lenny Euro as well. We know how good Mainoo is. We know how good Bruno is. Yes, Bruno's going to lose it. That's the curse of a creative player. But you don't need people to progress that ball from the back. You've got enough people who can do that. What United need is someone that when the opposition get it, we stop them transitioning into attack and getting a shot off, because that took the piss last season. Ugarte comes in and solves that very specific task. Stops United just being countered all the time. Wins the ball, intercepts the ball, gives it someone who can then restart the attack, and hopefully we go and score. Get him in. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.